Snow fell in heavy silence that night. The streets looked deserted. Yet one sound cut through the cold. A man's voice shouting, and a young woman begging. She clutched her stomach, pregnant, shivering, tears freezing on her cheeks. He threw her suitcase into the snow, then slammed the car door shut. The red taillights vanished, leaving her alone on the icy road. Why does betrayal always look this cruel? Why is it always the innocent who are left behind? Her name was Eliza. She was 19, naive, head over heels in love with a man who promised her forever. But forever lasted only until she became a burden. He was Adrian, wealthy, sharp suits, expensive cologne, a man who measured life only in profits. And tonight he calculated that love was too costly. The small suitcase sat half open in the snow. Inside were a few dresses, a folded letter, and a worn baby blanket she had bought secondhand from a thrift store. It was the only thing she had for the child she carried. The snow kept falling. The city around her sparkled with holiday lights. But to Eliza, the world had gone dark. She walked for hours. No money, no home, no family willing to take her in. By morning, she found herself near an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city, a place where broken things were left to rust. It was here she collapsed, her breath forming clouds in the frozen air, her arms wrapped around her belly, protecting the only life that still gave her purpose. 5 years later, that same warehouse would look very different. But we are not there yet. Back then, Eliza made a vow in the snow. If the world had rejected her, she would return one day not as a victim, but as someone impossible to ignore. Do promises made in pain become weapons in the future? Or do they become wounds that never heal? The next months were brutal. Cheap motel rooms, hunger that made her dizzy, working odd jobs while hiding her pregnancy under oversized coats. She gave birth alone. No doctors, no luxury hospital suite like Adrian had once described. Just a dim shelter and a volunteer midwife who whispered, "You're stronger than you think." Eliza named her daughter Hope, because that was all she had left. Every night, she sang to her child under flickering bulbs. Every morning, she looked for work no one else wanted, cleaning offices, carrying boxes, even washing dishes until her hands cracked from the cold water. One day, she walked past a construction site. Men in helmets and boots shouted as machinery roared, yet her eyes fixed on the blueprint pinned to a wall. She understood it instantly. Numbers, angles, measurements, as if the lines were speaking a language she had been born to know. That was the moment she realized she was not foolish, not broken. She had a mind sharper than anyone had ever given her credit for. Is survival only about enduring? Or is it about discovering the fire hidden inside us? She enrolled in night classes, mathematics, economics, engineering. Her daughter slept beside her in the library while she studied. Years bled into each other, but the snow never left her memory. The night she was discarded became the fuel for her rise. By the 5th winter, something extraordinary happened. Eliza was no longer invisible. Investors noticed her designs. Bankers whispered her name, and newspapers began calling her the youngest rising mind in urban development. While Adrian, the man who had abandoned her, sat in boardrooms, unaware that the very projects he signed off on were quietly being shaped by the girl he had once driven away. The storm was building, and neither of them knew that soon their paths would collide again. The storm was building, and neither of them knew that soon their paths would collide again. 5 years had passed. The girl once left in the snow now walked through glass towers in tailored suits. The world no longer saw a pregnant child. They saw a woman who owned entire city blocks. Eliza had become the youngest billionaire developer in the country. Her name appeared in business magazines, Forbes, Financial Times, her picture on covers, snow-white lights framing her face. The same snow that had once swallowed her tears now reflected her power. She moved differently now, every step calculated, every glance commanding respect. Hope, her daughter, followed her like a shadow in soft dresses and a curious smile. Few people knew their bond. Even fewer knew the truth of who Hope's father was. Was success the sweetest revenge? Or was revenge a poison disguised as victory? One evening, Eliza was invited to a gala at the Imperial Hotel. The chandeliers glowed like frozen stars. The men in black tuxedos, the women in silk gowns. Every corner smelled of wealth and ambition. And among them stood Adrian, Time had carved his face, not older, but harder. The arrogance remained in his posture. The same smirk that once made her heart flutter now only tightened her jaw. He did not recognize her at first. How could he? The broken girl he abandoned in the snow now commanded a stage. When the host announced, tonight's keynote speaker, Eliza Hart, founder of Hart Global. Adrian's glass slipped in his hand. Eliza walked to the podium, her heels clicking like thunder in the silence. She spoke not of personal pain, but of rebuilding cities, of giving homes to the displaced, of designing shelters that could survive storms. The room erupted in applause, but Adrian's clapping stopped midway. His eyes narrowed. His hand trembled. He was remembering. The suitcase, the snow, the night he left her. What happens when the ghost you buried rises not as a memory, but as a rival? Later that night, Adrian approached her. Eliza, is it really you? Her eyes were steel. Yes, Adrian. It's me. The pause between them carried 5 winters of silence. Behind her, hope tugged at her sleeve. Mom, can we go home now? Adrian froze. That word, Mom. His mind spiraled. His chest tightened. But he forced a smile and asked, Your daughter? Eliza nodded, the weight of truth pressing in the air. But she offered no explanation. Why was silence sometimes more devastating than words? Adrian watched them leave, the child's laugh echoing across the marble floor. And in that sound, he heard his own blood, his own legacy, a truth he had no courage to confirm. From that night, he began watching her. Through newspapers, through stock reports, through whispered conversations in boardrooms. Every success she had became a dagger to his pride. He wanted to reach out, to ask, but pride is a stronger chain than regret. Meanwhile, Eliza's empire expanded. Warehouses transformed into housing projects. Empty lots became shining towers. Her signature style was snow-white marble with black steel edges, a design that symbolized both fragility and strength. Every building was a silent reminder of the night she was cast into the snow. Do our creations carry our scars? Do cities remember the tears of those who built them? Adrian's company soon found itself bidding for a contract against hers. For the first time, he realized the woman he abandoned was not only back, she was his greatest competitor. The boardroom grew tense. The project at stake was the largest urban development in the region, billions on the table, and the government watching closely. Whichever company won would shape the future skyline. That day, the conference doors opened. Eliza entered in her signature white suit, her daughter's small drawing clipped to her portfolio. A son, a house, a family. Simple lines that carried unspoken meaning. Adrian sat across the table. For the first time in his life, he felt small. The battle had begun, and the snow outside the tall windows fell again, as if the past was returning to witness what would happen next. The snow outside the tall windows fell again, as if the past was returning to witness what would happen next. The boardroom was silent. Papers stacked high, screens glowing with blueprints, numbers that could shape nations. Eliza leaned forward, her voice calm, her arguments sharp as glass. She spoke of sustainable housing, of global partnerships, of designs that could withstand both storms and wars. Across from her, Adrian tried to steady his voice. He spoke of profit margins, market expansion, old models recycled with new packaging, but every word sounded thin compared to her clarity. The officials listened, nodded. Their pens moved across thick documents stamped with state emblems. The choice became obvious, and Adrian knew it. Why is it that power slips through the fingers of those who once thought they held everything? When the contract was awarded to Hart Global, the room erupted in applause. Reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed. Eliza shook hands with ministers and CEOs. But her eyes never once looked at Adrian, as if he were no longer even part of her story. That cut deeper than any loss of money. Outside the building, Adrian lit a cigarette. The snow hissed as ash fell into it. For the first time in years, he felt fear. Not of poverty, but of irrelevance. What is worse for a man who built his life on pride? To be defeated or to be forgotten? The weeks that followed grew darker for Adrian. Stock prices wavered. Rumors spread. Whispers about corruption in his company began to surface. Documents leaked. Bank transfers traced. Shadows of his past mistakes crawling into daylight. And somewhere in the middle of it all, he kept seeing that child's face. Hope's eyes, bright yet strangely familiar. Each time she appeared beside Eliza in newspapers, his chest tightened. Could it be? No. He pushed the thought away. But the denial gnawed at him. One night, he went back to the warehouse district, the place where he had once abandoned Eliza. Now it bore her mark, transformed into shining apartments with warm lights in every window. Families lived there. Children played in snow-covered courtyards. The buildings stood tall against the night, silent monuments to her survival. Adrian walked alone, his breath rising in the cold air. And he whispered, "What have I done?" But the city did not answer. Do places remember the sins committed within their walls? Or is memory something only humans must carry? Meanwhile, Eliza faced her own storm. With success came enemies. Corporations abroad felt threatened. Foreign investors questioned her rise. Geopolitical analysts warned, if Heart Global grew unchecked, it could shift economic balances across borders. Her victory was no longer just personal. It had become global. And still, in the middle of negotiations and flashing cameras, she tucked her daughter into bed each night. Hope would ask, "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" Eliza's heart cracked each time. She only whispered, "You have me, and I am enough." But was she enough? Could she shield her daughter from the truth forever? The breaking point came when an investigative journalist published a story, headlined, "The Untold Past of Heart Global's Founder." It spoke of her teenage pregnancy, the night in the snow, the man who had abandoned her. Though no names were revealed, insiders pieced the puzzle together, and Adrian realized his secrets were no longer buried. Would the world forgive him if the truth came out? Or would it destroy everything he had built? He sent her a message, one line only. "We need to talk about the child." Eliza read it in silence. Her fingers tightened around the phone. The snow tapped against the window of her office. Outside, the city lights flickered like restless stars. She had waited 5 years for this moment. Yet now that it was here, she felt both power and fear. The question was no longer if Adrian regretted. The question was what he would do. Now that the truth was circling them both like a storm. The question was what he would do. Now that the truth was circling them both like a storm. Adrian arrived at her office one night unannounced. The lobby guards hesitated, but his name still carried weight. He walked through marble halls lit by cold fluorescent light, each step echoing like Judgment Day. Eliza stood by the window, snow drifting outside like ash from a burning memory. She did not turn when he entered. Her voice was steady. "You should not be here." Adrian's throat tightened. "Eliza, I saw the articles. I know the truth now." She finally turned, her eyes sharp, her jaw unflinching. "Truth, you threw truth out of your car the night you left me in the snow." The silence between them was a battlefield. Adrian tried to speak again. "I made mistakes. I was young, afraid, but if she is mine." Eliza cut him off. "She is not a bargaining chip. She is a child. My child. The one you never wanted." Behind her, the door creaked open. Hope peeked in, her hair tied in a messy bun, holding a drawing in her small hands. A sun, a house, and 3 stick figures holding hands. "Mom, I finished my picture." The room froze. Adrian's breath caught. His eyes filled. It was like looking into a mirror of his own childhood photos. The curve of her smile, the shape of her eyes, unmistakable. Hope tilted her head. "Who is he, Mom?" Eliza's lips parted, but no sound came. The snow beat harder against the glass, as if the world itself wanted to drown the moment. Adrian dropped to one knee, his voice cracking. I'm someone who should have been here a long time ago." Hope looked confused. Eliza's face hardened. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and guided her out. "Go wait for me, sweet one." The door closed, leaving only the two of them in the silence. Adrian whispered, "Please, Eliza, let me make it right. Let me be part of her life. I regret everything." Eliza stepped closer, her heels striking the floor like verdicts. "Regret doesn't erase the nights I went hungry. Regret doesn't give back the tears I cried in freezing alleys. Regret doesn't raise a child." Her words cut deeper than any blade. Adrian's hands shook. "I'll do anything. Name it. Money. Power. Whatever it takes." She leaned in, her voice almost a whisper. "I already have everything I need. And you will live with the knowledge of what you lost." Is there any punishment harsher than silence? Is there any prison deeper than regret? Adrian staggered back. For the first time, he realized he could not buy what mattered most. Time, trust, a child's first steps, her first words, all gone. Eliza turned away, looking back out into the night. The city glowing with the empire she had built from the ashes of betrayal. Adrian left the building, the snow swallowing him whole. He lit another cigarette, but dropped it before taking a drag, his hands trembling too much to hold the flame. Reporters would later say his company collapsed within months. Investigations, fines, global investors pulling out, while Hart Global only grew stronger, her name echoing not just in boardrooms, but in parliaments across continents. But in the quiet corners of the city, whispers spread of a man walking the streets at night, searching for something he could never find again. And Eliza, she stood at her daughter's bedside, watching her sleep, her hand brushing the same baby blanket she once carried through the snow. The vow she made years ago had come true. She returned not as a victim, but as the richest. And yet, in her eyes lingered a shadow, because revenge may feed the world's applause, but it never quiets the heart. So she whispered to the night, "Will my daughter ever forgive me for the silence I kept?" The snow kept falling, the city kept moving, and somewhere in the storm, the unanswered question hung like frost in the air. What happens when the past is never buried? What happens when it decides to return again?